Our third example of converting winning positions features one of my games again, but this time I did not lose. I had this position with the white pieces against a strong FIDE master, and clearly the opening was a success. If you look at white's position, it definitely looks a bit obscure, but I haven't castled. Because I haven't castled, not but I haven't castled. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pawns, and my opponent only has 6. So 7 to 6. And I am significantly better for really the other reasons of positional evaluation, which you should have studied in chapter 1. King safety is about equal, but believe it or not, actually on an advanced level, I would say my king in the center is completely safe. Whereas this king, as you're about to find out in this game, is not super safe, not as safe as it looks. In terms of the space, I mean, it's not even close. Every single piece of black is completely restricted. Every single diagonal square is covered. Should this trade occur, I will regroup with my pawns and bolster this pawn and prevent all that play from happening. So I have a very good advantage. Now, there are a few ways of converting this advantage. I can send this game into an endgame, meaning I can try to trade queens, rooks, and try to promote my pawn. Another way is to restrict my opponent's play, and in doing so, launch my attack on the king. Find a way to do that. In the game, I played the move knight to a4. Now, there are a handful of good moves here. So if you want to look at this position, you want to say, well, you should have done this and this. Yes, there are multiple ways to convert this. You could say you should have taken, and then this. Sure, I played this. And my logic was, whichever knight my opponent captures, I will capture with my pawn. This will be defended, and now I have 2 passed pawns, right? So that's what I'm building for. My opponent did this, and now I have a choice. I'm like, well, I can trade all the knights, and Levy taught me, right, from the student. You trade when you're up. Not necessarily. You don't have to. Like, if the trade is good for you, which is kind of hard to evaluate sometimes, you should trade. In this case, I did not go for this massive exchange because I suddenly lose both of my active pieces. And my rook, compared to this rook, which could very quickly come into the game, or if the queen rotates and the bishop starts attacking my pawn, my pieces are kind of stagnant. So understanding that and going, I don't need to help my opponent. My opponent's pieces are literally tripping over one another. Let me move my knight out of the way now to try to jump into c6, where it will live forever. It is defended by 2 pawns in that position. So trying to improve my position to a maximum capacity. My opponent here decided that they could not deal with this anymore. If they play queen a7, I play knight c6, I attack the queen and the bishop, they have to go here, it's a fork. I might not even take. I might take, of course. But we talk about simplification, right? So maybe bishop g4, right? Like, it also depends what kind of simplification are we talking about. This knight is much better than this bishop, so I might not even trade. Would I get the rook? Probably, yes. And then would I trade off the light-squared bishops because both of ours are kind of around the same quality? Yes. Am I rushing to trade these knights? Not really, because my opponent's knight is very, very bad, right? So there's kind of a limit to the simplification rule. Now, in the game, my opponent didn't like their position so much that he actually played rook b7. He just gave me the rook. And I guess his logic was by taking the rook, I would be giving him an opportunity to get back into the game a little bit by maybe getting his queen over here. And I took the rook. I took the rook because material is important, right? So now I have an extra pawn and I have an extra exchange. I could do this. I also can wait. I can play bishop g4. But wait, if I play bishop g4, I lose a defender of that pawn. That's chapter 2. That's bad habits. And then all of a sudden, there's huge counterplay on me. So be very careful. In the game, I decided to do this. The idea, infiltrate with my queen. I would love a queen trade now to send us to an endgame. My opponent played this. Kind of ready to meet me here with the bishop. So what did I do? h5. Now it's time to combine the constant threat of the queenside infiltration with the attack over here. I now realize that because my opponent has a bunch of pieces in the corner on the left side, I can use my material not to simplify, but to dominate. Could I try to trade the queens? Could I try to trade some pieces? Absolutely. Maybe here it would have even been worth retreating for a moment, or for example, retreating to b2, simply because it's impossible for my opponent to move any pieces. Like, that's just the truth. None of those pieces can move. If none of those pieces can move, no counterplay can really be created. But I played this. I got really aggressive here. My opponent played bishop c7, still not doing a whole lot. Now I play g6. I play g6 because no matter what happens here, I'm going to get one of the pawns off the board. I just have too much material here standing around, right? So queen to d8, I mean, probably can take either. Can also move my bishop out here. I decided to take on f7. It's a check. It's a forcing move. And now I play king to f1. King f1 is a bit of a prophylactic move. Rook to g1 looks good, but it's never too late to blunder. There actually is a massive threat in this position onto white. Like if it was black's move here, let's say after rook to g1. And like I said, it's never too late to blunder. You always have to look for your opponent's most forcing moves onto yourself. And in this position, my opponent is threatening to take my knight and then use this battery to do this. Oops. That is not converting a winning position. That is in fact losing a queen and the game. So you have to be mindful, right? That didn't happen a move ago because it was check. So there is something still lurking in the position. Always monitor your opponent's forcing moves, which is why I slid my king out of the way. This is a very important move. Many of you would have continued the attack and maybe messed something up. Now, another option, of course, is the move bishop to g5. This absolutely is a good move. Point is that you are now hitting the queen, so all this stuff doesn't quite work. And then the attack can continue and so on and so forth. But in the game, king f1, now there's nothing anymore. I just move my queen or create the concept of simplifying like this. They take my queen, I take theirs. My opponent opted to do this, so I brought my queen, and we are simply going to overwhelm the king. Bishop to g4, my opponent tries to parry, my queen joins the attack, and there are many ways to convert this position, but the summary is basically the same. There's still no danger onto my king. Here comes my queen. This is a check. The rook is going to join the party too, and nothing can be done. I also just decided to be a little bit fancy at the end, trying to deflect my opponent's pieces backwards. And now, I mean, this was just a very fancy and completely unnecessary way to finish off the game. If you take, then there is this, and it's just a nice example of, you know, still I'm simplifying, by the way. So here, bishop takes, and my opponent still played a few more moves, but unfortunately for them, I was able to win the game like this. I even allowed them to promote. I mean, look at this. I did not even back up, nothing. I just played this. Checkmate is unstoppable. I went for the king basically throughout this entire attack. And this was an example of utilizing slight material advantage, but mostly positional domination to restrict enemy play, not rush with simplification actually this time. This time, I was happy to simplify on my terms, but not on my opponent's terms. So we're kind of adding layers to that previous section that we talked about simplifying and using the piece majority to create an attack, but also monitor how the remaining pieces on the board are still good enough to create counterplay onto us. So be mindful. Be mindful of that.